Now, as Ugandans go to the polls today to elect a president and parliament that will stir the affairs of the country, one thing is certain: the outcome of today's election will likely determine Uganda's outlook and future for the next few years. Incumbent President Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power since 1986, is pitted against 10 other candidates, including opposition frontrunner Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobby Wine. He's a singer turned lawmaker whose star power seems to have rattled the ruling party. Now, each of the 11 candidates go into the elections hoping to clinch the 50% of the votes required in the first round of the election to unseat the president.
And yes, indeed. Now, joining us from Uganda this morning, we're joined by Grace Kansiime, who is the presidential advisor to the Uganda president himself, Yoweri Museveni. Good morning, ma.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
We're very good. Thank you so much, Grace, for joining us. So let's just go straight to it. This is a situation in which there are millions of eyeballs, not just in Uganda, but outside of Uganda, focused on the country right now. So in terms of what's happening in the atmosphere right now, do you think people are ready and in the mood? Are they eager to go and cast their ballots?
Yes, everyone is ready, and actually the lines are too long. This, in the history of Uganda, this is the biggest turnout we've had for a long time.
Well, as a presidential advisor, how would you react to questions, bordering on the transparency of the polls and the denial of accreditation especially for international observers, which is responsible for the withdrawal of the U.S. observations team? So there have been talks about people not being allowed to do the international observation that we're supposed to do ahead of this election. What would you say to that?
No, accreditation has been given.
Okay.
Uganda has a limit of the number that they can take. For instance, if they say every embassy or every department brings in 20 or 50, I don't think we should be forced to take the number that another person wants to give. And so a specific number was accredited. We cannot be forced to take more than we can afford. And so, yes, the international community is observing the elections.
Okay. The
local communities are observing the elections. African IGAD is represented, and so many, except for the U.S. Embassy, which pulled out because they were given a specific number, but they wanted more.
Okay, so let's also talk about the campaign period. And this came while Uganda, like many other African countries, was also battling COVID-19. And Uganda put in place a number of restrictions, and those restrictions involve limits to the number of people that could meet in public, as well as, again, as I said, public gatherings. But we saw the president and the president's party campaigning while others were barred from doing so. So how do you respond to those who say that the president unfairly used his authority to continue campaigning while others were restricted from doing so?
Okay, the Electoral Commission gave rules and regulations. The number in any particular meeting was to be 200. 200 seated in an open place with all the standard operating procedures observed, and then the meeting would be conducted. And the president did that. It's unfortunate that there are some other people who didn't feel they could follow the rules and they wanted to do things their own way. And no wonder we have had a rise in the COVID-19 infections within this time. And I can say it's unfortunate that a presidential candidate cannot follow these steps.
Well, talk us about the reported cases.
But the president took that.
All right, madam, talk us about the reported cases of crackdowns on opposition rallies that that left, some dead bodies, to be quite honest, and also whatever intimidation, arrest of opposition candidates, and all that. Tell us all about that.
It's unfortunate we had Ugandans die, but this is as a result of selfish individuals who felt they can use the young people to cause violence, and then for them they step away, take their families out. leave the rest of the people to suffer. But in the meantime, every leader in the land, be it religious leaders, the cultural leaders, the national leaders, village leadership, they've all come out to explain that this is not a do or die. The young people have explained, were explained to, and I tell you, there has been a shift in the allegiance, because many people do not want to go with someone who, after being voted in power, then there is going to be mayhem in the country. And so it is so peaceful, the voting is so peaceful. The young people have come out to talk about the confusion they were thrown into, and everything is moving on very smoothly.
Okay, so let's also talk about some of the recent moves in the past few days. We've seen a move to shut down all social media platforms like Facebook, and some have said, of course, that's in reaction to actions taken by Facebook as well. But it's not just Facebook. Right now, you can't call Uganda on WhatsApp. You can't communicate with people using internet and social media. So we'd like to get an understanding of what prompted this decision from the presidency standpoint.
Now, if the social media is going to be used to cause insecurity to a country, then I think it is important that for a couple of days it is shut down, and then we proceed after the elections. But it's unfair that people can use such social media to spread violence and hate, which is not right. So, yes, it is right that it was shut down.
But let me follow up with that. So are you saying on the side of the presidency, they believe that it's social media that's responsible for some of the election violence we've seen, even violence we've seen before this time, violence that we saw even in 2020 while campaigning was going on?
It is not social media that spreads violence, but the person who sits behind the screen and spreads false rumors, and they create fear and disturbance around, and that is not acceptable.
All right. You just talked about having lots of queues this morning. We've seen a couple of images out of Uganda press, basically because we know that there is no internet, so we can't really see much. All we're getting clearly is from correspondence on the ground and videos about early voting. And you talked about long queues. It's about 10:24 a.m. Uganda time, if I'm not mistaken. From your perspective, how has the voting, commenced, and how early? Because we also heard reports of delayed voting materials in some regions in Kampala.
Well, on average, they have tried to bring the voting materials on time, but I must say they didn't plan so well for the long lines that were going to take place. For instance, I've been standing in the line for the last 1 hour, and I haven't moved an inch.
Oh, wow.
But like I mentioned, this is the biggest election that has collected so many people to come and vote. And so I can understand the underestimation of the Electoral Commission. Yes.
Okay, so we've seen President Yoweri Museveni taking a national address that was yesterday. He was also on international television, and he said that he was guaranteeing a smooth transition of power. And I'm putting that question to you again as a representative of the president right now, right here on Breakfast Central. President Yoweri Museveni, is he guaranteeing, giving his word that should he lose, he will not stand in the way of a smooth transition of power?
Yes, he stated it himself on international media, and he is quoted that he will give up power in the event that he loses.
All right. So, Grace Kansiime, before we let you go, so you've talked about it being probably the largest turnout that Uganda has seen in terms of elections in the past few election cycles. What do you think people are hoping for? What do you think Ugandans are hoping for from this election?
People have realized that for everything to happen, they must be involved in determining who their leader is, in determining who gets to parliament, in determining who becomes the president. And so once that education has sunk deep in the hearts of the people, they will come out to vote. And so I expect they will choose leaders who will meet their needs, leaders who will mind the people of Uganda, and leaders who will shun corruption and all these other habits that have been happening.
All right then, Grace Kansiime, Presidential Advisor for the Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni. Thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast Central live in Kampala. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for hosting me on your TV station.
Thank you.
I forgot to quickly sneak in. Has the president voted this morning?
Yes, he went to his country home. That's where he's voting from.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
Thank you. God bless.
Well, there you have it. So confirmation. The president himself has casted his vote. So we're also waiting for quotas from other candidates to know how far they've gone. I think there were a couple of images earlier of Bobby Wine's compound. There were lots of press gathered there to see if it went. And I think he should have casted his vote by now. You look at the time, past 10 a.m. in Uganda, Kampala, local time there.
And it's interesting, she says this is the largest turnout that Uganda has seen in a number of years. And I think there's something that has galvanized them to come out. Yoweri Museveni has been in power for about 35 years. And maybe with Bobby Wine, maybe we're seeing more opposition figures sort of putting themselves on the platform and saying, this is what we want to do. Maybe there's a galvanizing. And whatever the turnouts, whatever the end of the election might be, I hope that, as she said, Ugandans have realized that their votes do count, their voices count, and we'll see how everything plays out. But it's not just this election. Every election after this, every election, not even the ones before, even the ones after this, are very, very vital. And we encourage not just Ugandans, but Africans across the continent. Democracy is not just about voting and going to sleep. So please vote, but then please participate and be active. Long queues. And so I think Ugandans are ready to stand to the end, and we will stand to the end with them to see how this plays out and give you all the latest from Uganda as Uganda Decides 2021.